do-it-yourselfers. Hey, today I'm going to show you how I installed replacement pontoon aluminum fencing. Hopefully you'll be able to learn from my many mistakes and decide for yourself if you want to take on this type of project. I bought my aluminum fencing from restorepontoon.com. I bought 70 feet of both the aluminum fencing and the aluminum edge trim shown in this picture, but this picture actually is the leftover piece of aluminum I had after I finished. I have a 22-foot boat, really only needed about 60 feet, but not knowing how much scrap I might have, I'm glad to have that extra just in case something bad should happen to the boat. I ended up not using the edge trim for the installation. The box of aluminum fencing, by the way, weighed about 60 pounds, so be prepared for that. You can see why I wanted to reskin my boat. I bought it used a couple of years ago. Previous owner had beaten it up pretty good, not me, but it does have a fairly new Honda engine on it, so well worth investing some money, I think, into it to kind of make it snazzier. My skins, as I would call them, are on the outside edge of the aluminum railings, so it was easy to get to them. Many newer boats I know have the fencing on the inside of the rails, which means you have to remove your seats in order to remove the skins. Note that there's many screws and snaps that will need to be removed. You should have a good Phillips head screwdriver in order to loosen those up. I had a few that wouldn't budge, so I used this oscillating saw that I borrowed from my good buddy Old Wayne. Always good to have a friend with lots of good tools. It did a good job of coming up underneath the aluminum fin and cutting off the screw from the inside, although it did beat the hell out of the aluminum skin. This painter's tool will become your best friend. You'll definitely want to get one of these. It's indispensable in bending out the aluminum fins, as I call them, that hold the skins in place. I found that hitting it sideways down the length of the piece worked well to loosen up the fins. My pieces were tightly bonded along the center rail with a double-sided adhesive tape that I was able to remove with the painter's tool. I found out after I finished my boat that you can buy this kind of VHB, very high bond tape, and can use it on your skins as well. I was careful to remove each piece intact so I could use it as a pattern to get the exact measurements for each piece, replacement piece. I used a long 2x4 with some weights on each end to make sure it was flattened out to get the most exact measurements. I used my well-worn carpenter's square shown here to make sure I had straight cuts for the length of each piece. I used a 4-foot metal level that I had to guide my razor blade along each cut. I scored each cut several times to make sure it would bend and break with a nice sharp edge. Make sure to buy several good quality blades. You will certainly use all of them. The aluminum comes in different widths to accommodate the different heights of each piece on the boat, so I had to trim down each piece. For the long pieces, I set up 2 sawhorses with a couple of long boards underneath and then clamped another board on top right at the edge that I needed to snap off. That prevented the piece from bending on me as I worked my way down that piece, slowly bending the cut piece back and forth until it breaks off. And it does break off nice and clean. You'll get nice edges. Another tool you're going to want to get is this seamer tool. I got this one at Harbor Freight for about $8 and was invaluable for bending off smaller cuts, like a 1/2 inch or less, which unfortunately I did have to do a couple of times in order to get a piece to fit. You know, you may feel inclined to cut your pieces taller than they are, knowing that you can go back and trim it down if needed, but trust me, it's a pain in the ass to have to go back and cut down that 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch to make it slide in without killing yourself, and this seamer tool really worked great for that. I used the old pieces as a pattern for cutting curves. It made it real easy to copy these. I marked the non-cut edge with the word bottom, so I knew that that was the edge that would go on the bottom rail to help ensure that it would slide in as smooth as possible. I had a few cutouts that I knew I needed to make, like for the gas cap and the gas fumes exhaust valve there. I made a video of these for myself, so I was sure about how they would reconnect when I put the whole thing back together again. Um, Again, I used the old piece as a pattern for making sure I located the holes in the correct spot. I used a standard wood drill bit to drill the holes needed, and for the larger holes I made a starter hole with the drill bit, then scored out pieces around the circle, and used a pair of pliers to gently work each section of that hole. The holes came out pretty well, and I filed down the rough edges to make sure they fit properly. I thought about using my jigsaw for this, but I was concerned about the aluminum being bent as I made my way around the hole. I'm sure somebody that's good with a jigsaw would have no problem with that, and I'm no trouble cutting through this aluminum. Sliding the pieces into place was a challenge, especially around corners. I cleaned the bottom of each fin and sprayed WD-40 on it to make the piece slide on easier. And quite honestly, due to my bad language, I had to delete any video I had of me pushing and pulling the pieces into place. Some were a challenge. Be aware that getting around those corners can be challenging. Once you install each piece, you need to bend the fins back up tight against the aluminum skin. I used a wood block, but also ended up just banging with a hammer, and didn't realize it while I was doing it, but you can see if you look close here the little dents I made along the edge. So take your time. I think using some sort of a metal block to hammer on would work better and eliminate the chance of hitting the skin. In a couple of places the aluminum fins broke off due to the bending. I found a piece of aluminum at Lowe's that was a close match and screwed these on with the stainless steel screws. After I was finished, my boat guy Perry told me about a manual rivet tool that you can get that could be used to attach this kind of aluminum as well, instead of using the stainless steel screws. Perry suggested that I might want to put some of those rivets along the middle rail of each piece just to keep them snug and minimize any rattling that might occur when I'm out on the water. So here I was back to Lowe's and bought this Arrow Pop rivet tool with some rivets for about 30 bucks. You can see here my practice attempt on a piece of old sheet metal. You need to drill a hole that matches the size of the fat end of the rivet. It takes about, 3 or 4 squeezes on the tool to set the rivet. So having a tool with a decent grip is a must, I think. Made it a lot easier. Don't buy a cheap one. I took a piece of wood and marked the height of the center rail where the rivets would go, just so I wouldn't miss when I drilled my rivet holes, which I didn't. Worked out well. I installed the rivets after I put the boat in the water, so just in case the marker board dropped in the water, which it did twice, I tied it off with a short rope. Note that since your boat probably isn't sitting level, whether it's in your yard, on a trailer, or in the water, you can't really use a level to help you find that right spot to drill. Unfortunately for me, but a good lesson learned for you, is that I installed the rivets after I had already taken off the plastic protective covering after the boat was in the water, and it took me a couple of rivets and a few scratches on the aluminum to figure out to put tape around the rivet to avoid more scratches. I fibbed a little bit up front. I did use the vinyl edging for just one panel end here where there was no metal fin to hold the piece in place. You can see if you look close, I used rivets to hold the vinyl and piece in place. After all the pieces were installed, and as I noticed previously, before I installed the rivets, I went around with my blade and carefully cut off the protective plastic covering that comes on the aluminum and keeps it from being damaged while you're installing it. It looks great for a 16-year-old boat, along with my new Bimini top that I installed last fall, also from RestorePontoon.com. Looks like an almost brand new boat, don't you think? At least from a distance. If you have time on your hands, it took me over 40 hours, I would say, total time. So this is a very doable do-it-yourself project, and good luck doing your own bug.